Okay.
So, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Aisha Harris. I am a family medicine doctor in Flint, Michigan, and I have kind of partnered with advocating for My Uterus for Women's History Month to bring a important women's health topic up to the forefront. And so today I'm going to talk about the link between the environment and our hormones and kind of how the things that we take in as far as eating, as well as the things that we surround ourselves with and products we use, how they can impact our health in ways that we can kind of decrease that impact and try and make ourselves the strongest and healthiest version of ourselves. Um, so, like I said, I am a family doctor here in Flint. I came back to Flint a couple years ago after finishing residency, which is where I specialized in family medicine in Chicago. I own Harris Family Health, which is Flint's first direct primary care clinic, which is a monthly membership-based clinic in downtown Flint. It's the first of its kind in the city, and it's a really exciting time to bring that opportunity to the community. As far as our talk, what I wanted to start out with was just talking about what hormones are. I'm not going to go deep diving into all the things that I learned when I was in medical school and things like that, but I do want people to understand that there are a lot of hormones in our body, and it's not just the reproductive hormones that we think. There's your thyroid hormones, there's things that impact your kidney function, things that impact your bone health. All those things are considered hormones, and they kind of help your body function as far as increasing, decreasing different functions. And so our hormones are part of our endocrine system. If you go see an endocrinologist, they are kind of our hormone doctors. Most people see them for their thyroid problem or their diabetes problem, but they see a lot of people for different growth concerns, different puberty concerns, whatever it may be that your hormones are too high or too low. They are those specialists. As a family medicine doctor, I also see people with hormone problems and endocrine problems. Kind of the first line, most common things as far as your initial diabetes, your initial thyroid concerns, but there are specialists who go a little bit deeper into the hormone care. Hormones themselves are what we call chemical messengers. They are in the blood and they kind of bind to these different receptors or different objects in your body that help continue a signal to have something go high or low. The hormones start in a location called the pituitary gland. It's kind of a little organ that's right between your eyes and your brain, and it helps start the process of the hormone pathway, whether it's your thyroid, whether it's your reproductive hormones, whether it's growth hormones, whatever it may be. But the pituitary gland secretes these stimulating hormones to start that process, and they help regulate the different body functions in your different organs. As far as where they go, like I said, they go to your thyroid, they go to your kidney, they go to your bones, they go to your ovaries and your uterus. They're also the same hormones that help women produce breast milk and help them have contractions during labor and delivery. And so hormones are really important in our body and have control over everything. And so you really want them to be as balanced as possible. And that's why we're kind of having this talk, because our environment that we are living in, surrounded by, is impacting our health on a regular basis. I did want to point out, so we're kind of focusing on women's health and our reproductive hormones. And so from that pituitary gland path that I've been discussing, the FSH and LH hormones are what gets secreted from the pituitary gland. So there are starting hormones when it comes to reproductive health. And they're the ones that help raise and lower estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, which are our classic hormones that we think about when we think about women's health and reproductive health. And so I just want to point that to you guys as far as where those hormones are coming from. Now, when it comes to estrogen and progesterone, I mean, everyone has their different experiences when the levels go up and down, but I wanted to show an image that kind of separated the difference between estrogen and progesterone. They're kind of like a yin and yang type of hormone. So estrogen on one end increases our body fat. It causes some headaches. It can cause some depression. It can increase your risk of blood clots as well as different cancers. And then progesterone on the other end, it can lower some of your body fat. It can act as an antidepressant. It can still impact your thyroid hormones, It can increase your libido and your sex drive, and it can actually decrease your risk of some cancers. And so they, they should be sorry. They should be as balanced as possible. So that way you're able to have your different functions of your different organs. I did want to slightly point out testosterone. Women have testosterone too. We don't have it as high as a level as men, but depending on what your hormone balance and your hormone system looks like, some women do have higher testosterone levels than other women, and that can impact your libido, your memory, your muscle health, your blood cell health, as well as your skin health. And so testosterone also plays a really important role in women's health too. And like I said, all these are impacted by the pituitary gland and what it's secreting, and then how your different levels in your body are working. Now, what we really are going to get into today is our endocrine disruptor chemicals. I'll say hormone disruptors, I'll say endocrine disruptors, I'll say endocrine disruptor chemicals, and I see there's a typo on there, so I apologize for that. And I'm just going to move past that slide since it's a typo. But endocrine disruptor hormones are hormones that don't naturally happen in the body. And they can interfere with the hormones that are naturally happening in the body. This picture is just an image of different examples of ones that can impact your health. We're focusing on women's health and reproductive health in general, but they can impact everything in your body. These endocrine disruptors can interfere with production and release, transport and metabolism, as well as the binding, action, and elimination of your natural hormones in your body. And so you would think that your natural hormones are just playing their course, going up and down as they need be. And then you have all these endocrine disruptors that are changing the game and impacting people's health because of that. Specifically in the last 70 years, 80,000 chemicals have come about that impact our health. And part of that is because of just the progression of our society. We start making more things, from modern medicine to building different structures to how our foods have changed over the last 70 years. So as we kind of like progress and learn all these new things about how to use and make different stuff, those are secreting or creating chemicals that are actually impacting our health, and can do something on a short term, but also can do something on the long term. As far as endocrine disrupting chemicals, like I said, they're everywhere in the stuff that we eat, the stuff that we wear, the stuff that we use to clean our houses, the stuff that we use for our gardens, whatever it may be. There are a lot of endocrine disrupting chemicals out there that are impacting our daily life. Some at high doses can cause a lot of problems, but some at very small doses can cause a lot of problems. And that's where it gets difficult, because it's hard to neutralize or completely get rid of your exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals. But what I hope that people get from this talk is that there are some small changes you can make in your day-to-day life to at least decrease it, at least not give in to the fact that, oh, well, I'm just going to have these in my life and it is what it is. I don't want you to feel that way. I want you to feel like you can make some changes that can ultimately improve your health. The other thing about these chemicals is they can cause problems down the line, years from now. They can cause problems when you're pregnant, because the things that you put in your body, the hormone levels that you have in your body, also impact your baby as they're growing and trying to develop. Some of these things can be reversed as far as you just kind of like stop exposing yourself to that chemical or endocrine disruptor. Some of it can be irreversible. And that's where it kind of gets hard, because we don't really like irreversible health damage, because that can trickle into other complications that you have to address. And one of the problems with endocrine disruptors right now is that it's overlooked, in the sense that people know it's around, the government knows it's around, people who are making our daily products know it's around, but they aren't really regulated to completely decrease it. Part of that is just the process of making whatever they're making and the greater good of the profit and availability of that product. But it should be something that is more regulated, because it is impacting our health and our community in general. Now, as far as that impact, it really depends on what the chemical is, how long you're exposed to it, how good your health is. If you're at the top of your health as far as your strength and wellness, then you might not be impacted as much as someone who just got out the hospital the other day. And so those things play a role. Your family history and genetics play a role, as well as just what you're eating, your diet and exercise, your diet in general, nutrition in general, and just your physical health and how active you are. Now, one of the things with the endocrine disruptor chemicals is that as our society has modernized, gotten more creative with how we make things, how we create things, we've exposed ourselves to it more. But the place that we get exposed the most is actually in our diet, whether it's the things that are packaging our foods or our foods themselves and how they're made, especially processed foods, fast foods, those type of things. That's how we get a lot of our endocrine disrupting chemicals into our system. And that can cause some problems because they linger there, whatever we're digesting, whatever we're exposing ourselves to, and they can play a role in our different hormone levels. Like I said, we have a lot of hormones for all of our organs. And so if you have these disruptors kind of going through your bloodstream, you can imagine how they can impact every organ possible and possibly cause some function problems. When it comes to our disrupting chemicals, 90% are in your diet. And so I really encourage you to start looking at what you're eating and how much you're eating and how you feel after you eat. Because some of the things that we do, we're like, whether it's holiday seasons or some road trip and we end up eating on the road a lot or fast food on a road trip, you can picture back to how you felt on those times where you weren't eating your best and how your body may have been dragging, how something may have been a little bit more off. And that's because of those endocrine disrupting chemicals that may have been in that food that you've taken in. Now, the most common one, I'm not going to go into all the disrupting chemicals, but BPA is the most common endocrine disrupting chemical. And it itself is in our plastics, in our epoxy resins. So our canned goods, our plastic goods, our paper that we surround our food with, even our receipts have BPA in them. So you're like touching it and it's getting absorbed in your skin tissue. But this bisphenol A is the most common chemical. And it's one of the things that I really want everyone to kind of take away from this as far as thinking if they have some products that have a lot of BPA in it. I mean, we all have canned good foods in our fridge, or not in fridge, in our kitchen, unfortunately, just because of how some foods come. And so some things you can't completely wipe out, but maybe instead of buying so many canned goods, you can push for more fresh stuff or push for more frozen things. Even though those things also still have their own plastic, they have less ability to kind of absorb because you can take those things out of that plastic and still use it a little bit later. Canned goods, once you open it, you open it. But stuff that's in plastic or things like that, you can take it out and try and decrease how much they're absorbing in general once you've bought that product. There has been a study as far as children being exposed to BPA. And so we know everything that we give to children and we give to ourselves, they can also have that same impact. And so there was a study by the CDC that showed that children under the age of 6 had 93% of them had BPA in their urine. And so that's just highlighting how early these endocrine disrupting chemicals can get into our bodies. And for children, when you have these hormone disruptors showing up in the body, they can impact puberty, they can impact growth and things like that. And so as much as I want us to protect ourselves, I also want us to think to what's happening to our children, especially because I'll talk about this a little bit later, but endocrine disrupting chemicals also impact our weight. And I guess I talked about it a little bit, but I'll talk about it more later as to how far it increases our weight potentially. And we do have a growing number of children who are more obese than the previous generation. And a lot of that has to do with what they're eating, especially these endocrine disrupting chemicals. And so we should be looking at it a little more closely because the health problems that could happen right now, you might not see them, but maybe years from now, you could potentially see them. This last kind of note about BPA, one of the things that it does is it mimics estrogen. And so I talked about how estrogen can increase your risk of like depression symptoms, headaches, increase your body fat, increase your risk of different cancerous tissues, impact your thyroid, things like that. And so this graph just shows the first line is the level of estrogen in like a woman of a reproductive age, so generally 25 to 50, early 50s, or well, technically 18 to early 50s as far as having their period, having that regular cycle and stuff. So you can see where that bar goes to almost 400. That second bar is what your estrogen level looks like when you're taking like birth control pills. And so that's a proactive way to manage your hormone level. And you can see purposefully with the birth control pills, your estrogen level is lower. So that way you can decrease your ovulation potential and decrease the risk of getting pregnant. On that counterpoint, that bottom line is BPA. That is the level of BPA in some women in this study. And you can see how high it is. And if BPA is mimicking estrogen levels, that is basically like you having a lot more estrogen in your body, and it's working on those receptors and causing people to be maybe a little more depressed, maybe a little bit more increased weight, maybe their thyroid's not working like it usually is because of all this exposure to BPA. And so this is just something to kind of keep in mind that yeah, these levels are in your body, but they truly are mimicking the hormones that are naturally happening in your body, and that can cause many problems in the end. This is just another picture of kind of how BPA kind of impacts from type 2 diabetes to liver function. We talked about obesity. Well, I'll talk more about kind of fertility and puberty and things like that. But BPA can impact everything. Your thyroid function, how much inflammation you have in your body, how your brain is functioning. So we just want people to be aware that this is the most common one, but there unfortunately are a lot of other hormones out there that are going to potentially impact our health if we keep being exposed to them. This is just a chart showing some of the other ones that are happening. And so in our drinking water, there could be endocrine disruptors. In our makeup, in our cleaning supplies. We talked about the canned goods. In the pesticides and herbicides that are used to kind of our produce that is being made, those can have endocrine disruptors in them in order to like increase supply, increase profitability. They try and decrease the things that could kill off the products or the bugs that can kind of eat up our products that we want on the shelves. And so those can be something that we're consuming. Non-stick pans, as much as we love them, there's a reason why they're non-stick. There's a chemical on there that's making them non-stick, and that chemical is usually contains BPA as well as some other things. And so that's something to think about. Like, do we really need a non-stick pan, or do we need to kind of decrease our exposure? And so this is just kind of a short list, and then I have this longer list as far as a little bit more details, but I know it's a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot of things out there. I don't do a good job. Like, I'm sitting here looking at my water bottle, and it may very well have something in it, but it is something that is normal in our life. And I'm just trying to kind of convert to the reusable water bottles, convert to more glass, less plastic, so that way I can decrease my exposure. And those are just little things you can do. We can't go from 0% endocrine disruptor exposure, but we can decrease it by being a little more proactive with our choices. Yeah, I talked about some of the things on here. This is just to highlight the other ones that are less kind of your day-to-day things. Chemicals that we use that people are possibly are working with in factories or labs, metals that we have as far as in our automotive bills, and when we're kind of on planes, things like our medications also have endocrine disrupting chemicals in them. Some of them are to help with the medicines, and so they're a little bit more beneficial, but some of them are to just help bind as far as creating that material. And so there's things to be aware of, that there are a lot of places where these endocrine disrupting chemicals can be. So now I'm going into like more of the health side of stuff. And so you don't have to remember all the things that I just said. My goal in the second half is just to show you kind of the health impact of the endocrine disrupting chemicals, so that way you feel like you can be a little more proactive with your choices. And so I talked a little bit earlier about the study where there were children who were exposed to endocrine disrupting chemicals early. And that just shows kind of that they're getting it in their system, and they're getting it constantly. And one of those consequences is early puberty. Early puberty for the person kind of is a little bit annoying because they have to deal with those different growths, the period early. But for some, it can also increase their risk of cancer, depression, obesity, And oftentimes when some people experience early puberty, they can also become a little more riskier with their experimentation. And so we like children to stay children as long as possible. And sometimes if they experience early puberty, their health gets impacted, as well as their mentality of what they can be doing at their age, because they feel a little bit more older as far as possibly expose themselves to sex, drugs, and alcohol. And so we really want to have children be children as long as possible. And if we can prevent early puberty as long as possible, that is kind of a good step. These boxes are just kind of the things that can impact early puberty. And one of the things I do want to point out is how cigarette smoke actually can increase someone's risk of early puberty. And so if you smoke around children, if you cannot do that, at base, that's helpful for their health, for their hormone levels, as well as for their respiratory or their lung health and their heart health. Because we want them to have as clean as air as possible. We want them to not breathe in those extra chemicals, which can impact their growth. The other thing, advocating for My Uterus definitely talks about fibroids a lot. And so I did want to point out the fact that endocrine disrupting chemicals can impact your growth of fibroids, as far as generally causing them to grow or causing them to be bigger than you would have had them if you didn't get exposed to them. And fibroids themselves can cause a lot of pelvic pain, abnormal periods, abnormal bleeding, and cause some complications as far as infertility, as well as difficulties during pregnancy. And so these are a couple chemicals. So the BPAs and DES have been shown to impact fibroids. The other thing with uterine health is endometriosis. And so that is women's health concern, where the tissue, the uterus tissue can be in different parts of the body and cause increased pain, cause some difficult periods, cause some infertility issues. And so that's another uterus problem that the endocrine disrupting chemicals can impact in general. As far as more on fertility, this is a growing concern in our society over the last 20, 30 years. 12% of people are considered to experience some impaired fertility, whether that's just difficulty getting pregnant overall or just not being able to get pregnant after all of the interventions. And what they've seen is that there are more difficult fertility experiences for women less than 25 years old lately, over the last 2 decades. And what they kind of connect that to is some of the endocrine disrupting chemicals that our most recent generations of women have been exposed to, and how that's impacted how their bodies developed, as well as how their body responds to them trying to get pregnant for whatever reason. And so as much as it doesn't seem like it's a concern right now, if you are someone who is trying to get pregnant or wishes to get pregnant in the future, the chemicals that your body has been exposed to in the past or currently being exposed to can have some impact on your ability to get pregnant, whether it's just the regularity of your periods, or kind of how your body is trying to balance the different hormones. The other reasons for fertility problems can be on the male side, which they can also be impacted by endocrine disrupting chemicals. And so it's men and women, our reproductive systems are impacted by the hormone disruptors that we are exposed to. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is a common problem in women that the symptoms have irregular periods, pelvic pain. PCOS in general can cause increased risk of diabetes, increased risk of cancer and high blood pressure and miscarriages. And so this one also is severely impacted by BPA. And so if you have a diagnosis of PCOS, some of your symptoms, as far as it fluctuating, may be because of some of your endocrine disrupting chemicals that are going through from month to month. And so that's something to look into if you're trying to decrease some of your symptoms of the PCOS. Now, specifically with periods, up to 58% of women have moderate or severe pain with their periods. And that kind of definition is if you have periods that are so intense, so much bleeding, so much pain that you miss days at work, you have to cancel plans with people. It kind of takes days of your life away every single month because of the intensity of that period. We don't like to hear that people experience that as doctors, and we hope that we're able to address some of those concerns. Some of it can be medicine, but one of the things that can be beneficial is for women to look at the endocrine disrupting chemicals that they are possibly exposing themselves to, and see if that is making their periods more intense or more severe in general. The BPA, I just wanted to highlight with the period specifically, because of the BPA causing irregular periods. If you do make a simple change of adjusting some of your diet, you may see from a couple months of doing that your periods intensity have changed because you are decreasing the BPA levels in your body. Mood, I talked about depression, especially with estrogen, and with BPA mimicking estrogen, you can see why it may cause some increased depression levels, but BPA can also cause increased aggression, hyperactivity, anxiety. Endocrine disrupting chemicals in general can play with your brain tissue, play with your attention ability, your memory ability. They can have some long-term effects as far as dementia and Parkinson's disease. And so these are very broad connections, but the turning point or thing to take away is that these endocrine disrupting chemicals are playing havoc on our entire body. And so the more we can do to decrease them, the better our current health will be, as well as our future health. I talked about this a little bit already with the weight, but specifically endocrine disrupting chemicals. They change how we break down food as far as metabolism. They change how our energy is balanced and our appetite in general. And so that can play a role in increasing our weight, increasing our blood sugar level as far as how we manage our glucose, how our insulin levels are managed, as well as how we break down fatty tissue and lipids. And so that's not really fun if you're trying to like maintain a healthy weight, or you're trying to decrease your increased weight. Endocrine disrupting chemicals can make that process a little bit harder. And there's been a lot of studies that have shown that increased obesity or increased excess body weight can increase your risk of cancer. And the thought is that some of that increase is because of obesity and that increased weight, having the extra fatty tissue and how that impacts different functions of your body, but also the reason of that obesity possibly being linked to these hormone disruptors and those themselves causing increased risk of cancer. And so everything is never really on a silo. It's all kind of really connected. And so taking that time to look at what you're taking into your body, if you're really working out and you're really trying to be healthy as far as your nutrition and what you're putting into your body, just take an extra step to see if there's different chemicals that you're using on a regular basis or taking in on a regular basis that can also be inhibiting your ability to maintain a healthy weight. The immune system is another thing that can be impacted by your endocrine disrupting chemicals. And so there's immune suppression. And so when you suppress or decrease your immune system or make it weaker, that's when people get a lot more infections, whether it's viral infections, bacterial infections, your lung, your skin, whatever it may be. You may be immune suppressed if you get a lot of infections, and that could be impacted by these chemicals that you're exposing yourself to. But it's also on that other end, increased immune response, which is inflammation. And so when you have a cut or your sickness or a illness going on through your body sends these immune response molecules. And with endocrine disrupting chemicals, sometimes it can overdo it, and we can that can cause you to go over the immune response, have a higher inflammation levels, which themselves can increase your risk of other chronic diseases, whether it's diabetes, heart disease, lung disease. And so as much as we want our immune response to respond to stuff, we don't want to over respond. That's where the autoimmune diseases kind of come from. It's your body over responding to something, whether it's your thyroid, whether it's some skin problem, whether it's some stomach problem. The autoimmune diseases are a full body potential. Most people just have an organ or two that might be impacted by autoimmune disease, but there are full body ones like lupus, different like Hashimoto's, which is like a thyroid problem. All those are autoimmune problems that can impact your full body. And sometimes you are prone to it because of genetics, but you can have worse symptoms because of the endocrine disrupting chemicals. And so now we're going to go into like the solution, hopefully, and things that we can do to decrease our risk of exposure. And so the first question I get asked often is, are endocrine disruptors regulated? Unfortunately, they aren't really. Most endocrine disrupting chemicals are not considered a hazard, even though we know they increase disease, increase people's disability potential. They aren't considered toxins or hazardous chemicals like carcinogens. So carcinogens are molecules or chemicals that increase your risk of cancer. And so there's a lot of things that have been taken out of society, taken out of our reach because they've been shown to be connected to cancers. That's a good thing. That's what side effects and exposures to whatever, maybe a plant that they built or a food that people used to eat or some water source that people were using. People have found to unfortunately get sick. And when those people got sick, people did research and realized that there were some carcinogens in that supply, that product, whatever exposure. And so they regulate that and pulled it back. Unfortunately, with the endocrine disrupting chemicals, they aren't as well regulated. People actually don't take them serious enough, even though they've been shown to cause enough disease and burden to be over $340 billion. That's a lot, whether it's your personal life or your community life, or even your nation and in general. That's a lot of money to have to react to the problems caused by endocrine disrupting chemicals. And it's unfortunate that even though it's been shown to cause these financial burdens, it wasn't enough for people to already get sick. They proved it by it also causing some cost problems, but people still haven't been regulating them as much. Ideally, if they were regulated, there'd be clear definitions. People would know what to do and what not to do. There'd be better research on trying to decrease people's exposure and improve their health. But unfortunately, in our country and in a lot of countries, we don't prioritize health over wealth. And that would be ideal for endocrine disrupting chemical regulation, is that we look at the impact that it can have on a person, on a community, on a family, and prioritize that over the financial benefit of that product, that service, that building, whatever it may be. But those are kind of idealistic things that hopefully will happen in the future, but we can take steps on our own to decrease our exposure, since the community and society isn't quite doing it yet with better regulations. Things that we can do is look at labels that we have, avoid soaps that may contain certain products like this triclosan, avoid things that have BPA or other endocrine disrupting chemicals in our shampoos and our body washes. Look at things that have possibly been exposed to chemicals, whether it's things in our home when you are trying to put out a fire and you spray the extinguisher. Those type of objects in our home should be taken away. Things that have been sprayed from like pesticides or just very strong chemicals, we should on a daily basis not be laying on those things, breathing in that material. If we can replace those objects, sometimes it can be a financial burden to replace those objects, but the long-term benefit of not constantly exposing yourself to these things can be helpful. Even things like when you vacuum, not having something that just puts it back into the air, having something that contains that dirt and material is helpful. So that way you're not breathing it back up. Because we all know when you vacuum or you're sweeping up things, everything's settled before you move it. And so if you have ways to not breathe in whatever you're about to sweep up or vacuum, those can help decrease your risk, because you've kind of instigated the dirt or molecules now, and now they're floating in the air. So decreasing that is helpful. Looking at the makeups that we use, trying to be more organic with our cosmetics, trying to be more organic with our foods. I know those can be difficult as far as like finding them, having access to them, or even affording them. But even if it's not purely organic, there are a lot of things that say no preservatives, no kind of added materials or added chemicals. So that's a step. That's kind of that step between, well, they can do whatever they want with my food, to, well, at least they're not adding preservatives or not adding this or that. It's kind of as natural. It's a little bit more natural than the I don't care type of food category, but maybe I'm not able to afford the organic quite yet, even though that is the purest. It came how it is, and they didn't add anything. But just having that range of decreasing our impact to those chemicals is very beneficial. And even the packaging. So I talked about how canned goods can have endocrine disrupting chemicals, especially BPA. Plastic that our food come in also can have chemicals in it, and they can be clarified on the label. But even if you aren't able to fully kind of get something that doesn't have endocrine disrupting chemicals, taking something out of packaging and putting it into glass or paper material can be really helpful. It may not last as long because you're changing the packaging, but it can decrease your exposure and how much is it absorbing from the packaging that it came with. This is an example of some of the different labels. And so what I at least want you to remember is like 1, 2, 4, and 5 are safer plastics. The 3, 6, and 7 are the ones that have a lot of endocrine disrupting chemicals in them. And so ideally we don't really want plastic, and it's not the best in general, but there are some plastic material that's a lot safer, that's a lot less likely to absorb into your cosmetics or products or cleaning supplies, or foods in general. And so if you can look for these labels when you're shopping, you can at least take one step in decreasing your exposure, because at least the packaging doesn't have it. That doesn't say that if you're buying a cleaning supply that doesn't have endocrine disrupting chemicals in it. That's another step. But it's just the plastic that it's bundled in. But there are safer chemicals as far as our cleaning supplies that don't have hazardous material in them, and are a little bit more natural based, which will be ideal to help mitigate our exposure. This is just kind of a highlight specifically how to avoid BPA. Some things say BPA free on their label. Using glass or stainless steel water bottles can be helpful instead of the plastic. Not cooking our foods in our plastic containers, because that just makes for a better environment for the chemicals to come off of the plastic into our food. Avoiding canned goods if we can, and trying to go as fresh as possible with our food products can decrease our BPA exposure. These are other pictures, just kind of just like foods that we should be prioritizing a little bit more. Whole foods, more nutritious foods, less kind of fast foods, alcoholic foods. Those are all ways to kind of decrease our exposure to the chemicals and help us have a healthier, more stable level of our hormones. Another kind of visual: fish, fresh produce, fruits, and teas and things like that on a general basis can help us balance our hormones. And depending on how they're packaged, they can decrease your risk of the endocrine disrupting chemicals. So I know that's a lot. I'm going to answer some questions in general, but we're surrounded by endocrine disrupting chemicals everywhere. I'm not saying that we can zero it out, because that's impossible, but we can take steps to help decrease our exposure. Every little step that you take can make a big difference when it comes to your health. And being aware that these things that you're taking in as far as food, these things that you're putting on your body as far as like shampoos, lotions, soaps, whatever it may be, may increase your risk of endocrine disruptors. And so taking those steps to switch out some products, maybe your favorite product has a version of itself that doesn't have as many endocrine disruptor chemicals, and so you can change to that. Or maybe a food that you like to buy has a special packaging that decreases the risk of exposure. But I really just want people to know that these things are around. You can't zero them out, but you can make steps every day to decrease your exposure, because these are impacting our health and can change how we feel right now as well as how we feel in the future. And if you have some of those problems I talked about, as far as abnormal periods, increased period pain, headaches, mood changes, things like that, some of those may be full-on diagnosis of a medical problem that should be treated by surgery or medicine, but some of those can be adjusted as far as intensity or how you're feeling based on you shifting some of your endocrine disrupting chemical exposures. And so if you're having a really bad time with period pain, and you don't want to take any birth control pills, or you don't want to do any injections or whatever, look at what you're eating, look at what you're using on a regular basis. If 1 month your period was more intense than it was another month, maybe look at what the difference between those months were. Maybe you had a better diet. Maybe you changed some products that you regularly use. Those type of things can impact your period pain. And maybe that is a simple change that you can make. So that way you don't have to be on any other medicines, or you don't have to deal with more severe or intense period pains. And so with that, I will close and take any questions. And hopefully you learned a lot. Like I said, they're everywhere. We can't change everything, but we can take small steps as far as looking at our packaging and looking at the materials that we use on a regular basis, and seeing kind of how those environmental endocrine disruptors impact our hormones on a regular basis, because we have hormones running throughout our bloodstream all the time. And we want them to be as balanced and stable as possible.
Dr. Harris, thank you so very much. This was so very informative. You mentioned how that you knew that this would be overwhelming. I agree with you. I probably can speak for a lot of people that's on here that I am overwhelmed. However, I am encouraged that you gave us some feedback and a lot of good information. So while this is our question and answer period, I will read off some of the questions that we have in the chat right now. It says, good morning. Question for Dr. Harris. This is from Jasmine Hall. Were there products that you had around the house that you realize were harmful, maybe endocrine disruptors, and swapped out for safer products?
Yeah, so one of my habits is trying to always find a sale. And so a lot of the like kitchen dishwashing soap or my laundry soap or even my like base cleaning supply that are like so good, they work great, they had endocrine disrupting chemicals in the plastic as well as in the product. And so I've been trying to not go for the like popular convenient brand. I'm still trying to like I'm trying not to be wasteful, so I'm like still using them into the end. But some of them, once they ran out, I was able to get better products that had more kind of some cleaning supplies that have more natural products in them, or kind of things that I can mix that are more natural, and I can make my own cleaning products. Even the containers that I use, and so I prefer, if possible, for example, laundry detergent, I try not to buy the ones with plastic, and try to use the powder, as far as having the powder ones come in the cardboard and stuff like that. And they have a little bit less additives because they're all kind of just the material and not the things to make them liquefied. And so those are things that I've kind of switched up. But I knew that the stuff I use for cleaning, whether it's my clothes or my house, kind of had things in them. And if it wasn't like physically from the plastic, some of the stuff, like just the chemicals that I was breathing in, and trying to make those adjustments. Some months I'm better than others. And so I'll go to the store and I'll go back to my bad habit. I'm like, oh, dang it, I bought that again because I've been buying it for years. But I really been trying to make those small changes because, like I said, we're exposed all the time, but there's some things in our everyday life that we can shift. As well as me trying to use more reusable bottles and stuff to try and help out my decreased exposure.
That's fantastic. So I have a question as well. Is there an organization or site you recommend for us to see, like a listing of the BPAs or these EDCs, where we can do our own research and probably educate ourselves further?
Yeah, so there's some information on EDCs by the CDC. There's also and I can send this link to you because I can't remember the BPA one. But there's an organization that focuses on, dang it, I was just looking at it the other day, that focuses on making products BPA free as much as possible. And they had a list. I can't remember it right now, but there are companies and nonprofits that are focused on decreasing our exposure. And so they at base have a name of all the potential chemicals that we can be exposed to, and also counter that list with kind of common products that we use on a regular basis and the chemicals that are often in them. And so those are things that we can find. The things as far as the labels that I showed, as far as the 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, and 5 being like the ones that we should focus on as far as using, and the other ones not being ones that we should use. Those type of things are across the board in each kind of state and national level. But I will refine those links that I was looking at when I was making this presentation, and send it to Dr. Joy and Shanita so they can share with people.
That would be
Maybe a link on the main Advocating for My Uterus website. I don't know if you guys can add that if I give you some information.
that would be phenomenal. So I'm reading here. I don't see any other questions, but I have more questions. Do you know of any legislation currently to protect the consumers as it pertains to all these chemicals in our environment and the products that we're consuming on a daily basis?
I don't know of any specifically. I know there's always a continuous fight to address environmental and climate health concerns. The difficult part in general is that some things are federal and some things are state. And as we get into policy, it's always a financial situation of, yeah, the greater good is for this not to happen, but the financial benefit for whatever this person, this organization, unfortunately tops out a lot of people. You can kind of reflect on the last years as far as the ozone layer and like what we've been putting in the air, and the push for more kind of electric cars versus the gasoline based cars. And so it's a very slow process, but I don't know any specific ones.
Okay.
If you want to find out just policy in general, in the Michigan, the state of Michigan, if you go to the michigan.gov, they have different sections. I often look at the health ones. I haven't looked at the environmental related ones, but there is an environmental like committee and things like that. And so they have all the legislation or things that have passed and things that are pending, related to environmental like health, environmental choices, environmental products and stuff like that. And so I would definitely encourage that. And I can send that link too, but it's a public website to categorize environmental stuff, agricultural, consumer products, things like that in our policy. They try and organize it, even though it's very dense.
Yeah, all the resources that you have available to you, we would greatly like to receive that information. So I'm checking the chat for any more questions.
I have one quick question.
Want to go next?
Hello.
I can hear you, Joy.
You can't hear? Okay. Hi, quick question. So in terms of, so Dr. Harris, you and I have had a conversation as it pertains to the health literacy aspect, right? And so with some of these, the terms that you've used, do you have any recommendations as it pertains to if we're sharing the information with other people? Like, so, you think about hypertension and then the community may understand it as high blood pressure. So like any recommendations that you have in terms of the terminology that we use with our family members or others that we're trying to educate about this as well?
I mean, endocrine disrupting chemicals is definitely a mouthful. I would probably generally describe it as hormone changers. And that might be a way for people to kind of recognize that they know some things about hormones and that it is kind of negatively changing some things. But that would probably be how I would go about it as far as just labeling that aspect. But as far as explaining to people, just like when you go about a bad kind of food product and you realize that it's causing a like stomach ache or stomach issue, there are a lot of things that we put in our bodies on a regular basis that just aren't going to do us good. And we might feel it now, as well as far as having diarrhea or as far as throwing up, or we might feel it later as far as like medical problems that we think aren't impacted by our day-to-day life, but are actually impacted by everything that we do, whether it's the food we take in or the lifestyle we have. But I guess that would be kind of the general neutral way I would possibly explain what hormone disruptors or hormone changers can be.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. I have another question from Cheryl E. Good morning, everyone. My question to Dr. Harris: I loved fresh fruit, but noticed that when I moved from Michigan to Georgia, that I was unable to eat any fresh fruit, and that's been over 20 years. I know there are pesticides that are sprayed on the fruits. The only fresh fruits I am able to eat are apples, and they have to be sliced and soaked in vinegar. I am able to eat canned fruit and juices or frozen fruits that are diluted with other ingredients. Do you know or have you heard that the washes actually work? My PCP told me to take a Zyrtec an hour before eating fruit, so I found a new one. And when I went to an allergist, I had 12 pages of allergies. Do you have any information you can offer?
So with you moving from Georgia to Michigan, your base exposure is different than many of ours who've been mainly up here. And so that is a common thing that can happen when people shift from one state to another, especially when it's a big kind of climate situation. And so the things that we've been exposed to on a regular basis for most of our lives are new to you, as being someone who moved kind of up here. And that's where kind of new allergies can present themselves, because now you have like a new exposure. As far as trying to not have to take an anti-allergy medicine or not have to completely be worried about reacting to something, if you are able to find some organization or group that produces something in the cleanliness way, that would be my first step. I don't know a lot about the fruit cleaning solutions and stuff. I would encourage them to be as natural as possible, so you aren't like adding to the situation as you're also cleaning the fruit. But I also know that there are a lot of fresh food like markets or just farmers markets that have more natural growing fruits and less mass produced things. One of the things that happens in our society is that we've had a lot less farmers, a lot less growers. And so the people who are doing it in bigger masses. And when you do things in bigger masses, you have a lot more land and a lot more things you have to control. And that's where the pesticides and herbicides and adding things so that way they can travel across the country and not kind of go bad go. But the more local you can be, and the smaller your farmer or your small business of the farmer is, the less likely you are to have those additives that you possibly are allergic to. But your story is common as far as someone coming from a different state to the north, just because of you kind of growing up with certain things and then you kind of switching it up by going to a different environment. And that's what happens as far as getting more allergies as an adult. People switch environments and switch their exposure. But yeah, the smaller, more natural kind of companies that don't have to ship farther away and can just pull it off of the tree, pull it out of the ground and give it to you. Those are the ones I would encourage, because they add a lot less things and they aren't mass producing as big as these larger companies.
We just had a comment placed in the chat regarding what they use to clean their fruits, Dr. Harris. She says, this is from Symmetria Copeland. I use baking soda, white distilled vinegar, and warm water to clean all my fruits and veggies, and I found it most effective than solutions.
Yeah, baking soda and vinegar are awesome solutions that can be used for a lot of things. And so recognizing that they can be used for cleaning as well as cooking and stuff like that is a very natural way to decrease your risk of exposing yourself to these chemicals. And so that is a very smart idea, and I definitely encourage that.
I have a couple more questions here. I would like to know if all the BPAs that are in our surroundings can possibly cause early menopause in women. That is from Ms. Marjorie Tetterton. I apologize if I said that incorrectly.
Yes and no. Some people are just prone to early menopause based on like their family history and stuff. But in the same sense that people can have early puberty and there's some shifts in their hormone levels, the endocrine disrupting chemicals can impact your timing of your menopause. If you are someone that has early menopause, There's not really a lot of things that we can do once you're at that point. But if you haven't reached that point already, decreasing the endocrine disrupting chemicals that you expose yourself to can be beneficial. One of the things that we do like to emphasize if someone is going through early menopause or hit menopause already, if you go to that point where you haven't had a period in the year, that is kind of the first definition that often kind of gets put out there with menopause. And once you kind of are at that point and we kind of feel like you're in menopause, whether you've had the hormone checks or not, if you start rehabbing a period after going a very long time without a period, you should go to the doctor to get checked out, because that vaginal bleeding can be a concern for some cancerous tissue changes. But as far as your original question and the hormone disruptors possibly contributing to early menopause, they definitely can, because they are shifting things, and there are some that play with your estrogen level that can impact the timing of your menopause symptoms.
Sis, thank you. One last question that I have, I don't have any more questions in the chat. Are there any cosmetic lines that you recommend for us that are safer than the most notable brands in the industry?
I can't really speak on that. I don't even wear makeup that often. And so that is a very good question, because that is something that you put directly on your skin.
Absolutely.
And whether you have smooth skin or you possibly have like a small cut and stuff like that, no matter what happens, your cosmetic material, as far as your makeup and stuff, can get absorbed into your skin easily, whether you have an open sore or not. And so I can't really speak on ones that are. I will say there are many ones that should be disclosing the material that's in the product. And so of the most common endocrine disrupting chemicals, BPA is like the most common, which is why I talked about it, but there are a lot. There's at least a top 20 list of those ones that were in that circle, and they all kind of are subcategories of those ones in that circle. But you can go through the ingredient list of some of your favorite cosmetics and see. Some of it is the container that it's in, as far as that plastic container, and some of it is the makeup material itself. But as a non-makeup person, I don't even know many brands, so I'll get to that. But yeah, there are definitely healthier versions of different materials, and you just got to find which one you would want to try. But even the ones you use right now, they may be safer than you think. You just got to look at the material.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. All right, well, one last question. How do you feel about addressing menstrual issues with herbs and herbal methods, primarily inconsistent menstrual periods? And we'll take that as the last question for our forum today.
Yeah, so I think there's always a space for natural medicine as far as herbs and herbal methods. My challenge is that sometimes people only settle on the natural medicines when they should be possibly addressing it through modern medicine. But there are some herbs that decrease inflammation, some that help balance your hormones as far as their natural activity. Some of these herbs are actually used in regular medicine, not in like the birth control pills and things like that, but there are a lot of ones that have been the base or foundation of some of the common medicines that we use. And so they aren't things that we want to kind of always say like they don't work at all, but there are some that specifically for periods can decrease inflammation, can kind of impact your mood in the sense that it can shift some of your hormone levels and how you're feeling. I can't name of them specifically. I just have a book that I kind of go to when people are more favorable about herbal medicine. There's also vitamins that can help kind of rebalance some stuff that if the vitamin D's, the vitamin C's, all those can impact your immune system, which can also help during your period health in general. But I will say I'm cautious with fully kind of committing to only herbal medicine, but I know there's also some great samples out there that can be helpful. What I will say is doing things with multiple vitamins or multiple herbs can be beneficial if you individually know what those herbs or vitamins are doing. And so if that is something that you're interested in, I would suggest starting with one and kind of building from there. Because the multivitamin, multi-herb kind of combinations may have stuff in there that you don't actually need when you could just be taking 2 really good vitamins or herbs. And so if that is kind of a path you want to take, I suggest starting simple and then building from there, and not thinking that the all-purpose multivitamin, multi-herb pill or solution is like really doing a lot for you, when you should focus on a few that are really kind of addressing your symptoms better.
Dr. Harris, thank you so much for all the great information. The content was phenomenal. You've given us a lot to think about today. Our board president has let us know in the chat that this video is being recorded, so we can go back later on and slowly go through the slides that you presented and research ourselves. I want to thank you again. I want to thank everyone for joining us. And if anyone has not subscribed to AFM News List to stay up to date on future workshops, please do so at www.advocatingformyuterus.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
You're welcome. And I guess I will say, maybe I can do my update as a blog that people can go to very easily. The information I'm going to send you, maybe I can format it in that way so it could be easily read.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Harris. We'd love to have it.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye-bye.